Hello, BookTube. I have a try a chapter tag video for you today. Um, so as I mentioned in my weekly reads, this reading week has been a bit of a mess, and I thought to go ahead and spend this Friday doing a try chapter tag focused on four fantasy novels. The reason why I picked four fantasy novels is that I think there's an upcoming BookTube event that's centered on fantasy. I could be wrong. I know there's Rocket Summer in July, which is focusing on vintage science fiction. And then there's also Sumerian September in September, both of which are hosted by Michael K. Vaughan. But isn't there one that's more centered on another one that's centered more on fantasy? Or am I just conflating it with the sword and sorcery movie thing? I don't know. But whether or not there's a fantasy-centric booktube event coming or in the works, there's also my own back-to-school reading project where I think I might use the history subject to as sort of for fantasy. And also, I'm going to be clearing at least a bookcase worth of books from my science fiction and fantasy collection over what I've already removed for my next year's purge. So doing this try chapter tag gives me an opportunity to look at these books and have a better idea of, okay, do I want to keep them or do I not want to keep them? So the four books I selected are War of the Flowers by Tad Williams. There is no description about what the book is about, so I'll just tell you. Theo Vilmos is a musician in a garage band, and he's 30. He is expecting a baby alongside his partner, Kathy, and he gets drawn into the world of fairy, which is the War of Flowers in the title. So this is an urban fantasy story. Next is the second book I picked is The Black Prism by Brent Weeks. So The War of the Flowers is a standalone fantasy. The rest of them are the first books in series. So The Black Prism by Brent Weeks is the first book in the Lightbringer series. So Guile is the prism, the most powerful man in the world. He is a high priest and emperor, a man whose power, wit, and charm are all that preserves a tenuous peace. Yet prisms never last, and Guile knows exactly how long he has left to live. But when Guile discovers he has a son, born in a far kingdom after the war that put him in power, he must decide how much he's willing to pay to protect a secret that could tear his world apart. The third book is 12 Kings in Sharakhai by Bradley P. Beaulieu. This is the first book in the Song of the Shattered Sands. Sharakhai, the great city of the desert, center of commerce and culture, has been ruled from time immemorial by 12 kings, cruel, ruthless, powerful, and immortal. With their army of silver spears, their elite company of blade maidens, and their holy defenders, the terrifying Asurim, the kings uphold their positions as undisputed, invincible lords of the desert. There is no hope of freedom for any under their rule. Or so it seems, until Sita, a brave young woman from the West End slums, defies the king's laws by going outside on the holy night of Bet Zahir. What she learns that night sets her on a path that winds through both the terrible truths of the king's mysterious history and the hidden riddles of her own heritage. Together, these secrets could finally break the iron grip of the king's power, if the nigh omnipotent kings don't find her first. And the fourth and final book I selected is The Kingdom of Liars by Nick Martell. This is the first book in the Legacy of the Mercenary King trilogy. Michael is branded a traitor as a child because of the murder of the king's 9-year-old son by his father, David Kingman. 10 years later, Michael learns something is there in the hot, white emptiness of his mind that can clear his family name. In a world where memory is a coin that pays for magic, the Hollows is ruled by a royal family that is spiraling into a self-serving dictatorship, just as gun-wielding rebels clash against the country's magically trained militia. What the truth holds will completely change the Hollows, and Michael Kingman and his family and friends are determined to do the impossible. So, The Kingdom of Liars. So, I read the four in order of publication. So, The War of the Flowers came out in 2000, or thereabouts. The Black Prism in 2010. 12 Kings and Sharakhai about 2015. And The Kingdom of Liars in about 2020. So, the first chapter of The War of the Flowers is about Theo Vilmos coming home from band practice, finding his girlfriend, having just suffered a miscarriage, and the end of their relationship. It was okay, although I don't think the characterization really works. There's just something that's I can't quite put my finger on it, but there's just something off about the characters, their interactions, their dialogue. It seems so artificial, and that really bugged me. The Black Prism starts with a young man named Kip venturing on to a nearly 2-decade-old battlefield, hoping to find something he can take back to sell, when he is accosted by an army troop. I really did not like that first chapter at all. I just found it so completely off-putting. The characterizations, the whole setup, the whole sort of everything about it just really annoyed me. The 12 Kings in Sharakhai starts with Sita in the fighting pits, fighting a captain of the guard, and doing quite well. The fight is rather well. I mean, the description's pretty good. Sita's thoughts during the fight are fairly well. I still don't like it though. And finally, The Kingdom of Liars. The story opens with Michael on trial, even though he is very young, really just. I hated Michael. Just the whole opening narration is just no. So if I were to rank these 4 books from best to worst, The War of the Flowers is definitely the best. It has the best opening chapter. Do I see myself necessarily wanting to read all 800 pages of this book? Not really. It didn't. While this is the best of them, it's still not enough for me to want to read. Number 2 is 12 Kings of Sharakhai. 3, I think, would be The Black Prism. And 4 is The Kingdom of Liars. So I think whatever reading of these, I'm not. I think they will probably all be sent to the donation box of doom once I get around to making a new batch of them. So that was a rather disappointing few hours of my life. But yeah. Anyway, BookTube, I will see you next week with some new videos. So until then, thank you. Have a great rest of your afternoon and weekend, and stay safe.